Yeah, I think we will.
Yes, well, it's live from the North Pole, but it's 5 p.m. in the UK apparently. So we're 2 hours earlier than normal. So whether we've got anybody watching us, who knows? Who knows? Anyway, but obviously, Coach Stephen can't be here, and maybe I should be putting on a voice. I don't know. So anyway, Richard, what is going to be your Christmas dinner tomorrow?
The £1 million question, $1 million question. The very question I popped into our Facebook group recently, which had a ton of comments. So look, I'm incredibly strict. I always feel awkward when I tell people what I eat on a daily basis. Hey guys, thanks for the comments. All the regulars popping in. I don't want people to feel that they have to be as strict as I am. So I'm always dubious in regards to telling people what I eat on, my time off over Christmas, etc. But my little girl, I'm trying to get her into the way of the carnivore lifestyle, ketogenic lifestyle. She understands lots. She's only 9, but she's incredibly switched on. Unfortunately, with the school environment and being young, she's susceptible to external interests, if you like, and she doesn't live the lifestyle that I would like. So I'm trying to get her into eating more animal proteins, but I don't want to force it upon her. It needs to be something. It needs to be a decision that she makes herself. So I give her the option. I asked her what she wanted to eat for Christmas dinner, and I mentioned turkey, duck, beef, and I listed everything, and she wanted chicken. And that's fine, because I don't eat chicken very often, so it's going to be a treat for me. Now, I also asked her what she wanted with it, and I went through a list of stuff, and I don't want her to feel that she is ostracized, from her friends when she goes back to school and the things that she's had. So I've given her the choice. So she's having the full shabam. Out of this, I will be straying a little bit. So I'm going to eat a little bit of chicken. I've got pigs in blanket, which I can't guarantee are going to be rusk-free. They are made by the butcher, but I doubt that they are rusk-free. And I'm having some duck with that as well. But my little girl is going to have roasties and mashed potato and parsnips with honey and all the trimmings. And that's fine. If you decide to do that, we're not here to judge. And I think that's an important point to make, because we're all allowed to eat whatever. Just because we're living this lifestyle, it doesn't mean that we have to be strict all the time. And again, this is all about the rule and not the exception. So that's what I'm eating. That's what my little girl and my family are eating. What are you eating, Steve?
Well, you see, it's different because the kids have flown the nest. So Jane's two are in their 20s, and they are both off. One's down in London with her boyfriend, and the other one is, off with her husband and his family, so to speak. So it's Jane and I and Rupert the dog. So Rupert is a raw carnivore dog. So it's easy. We'll just be strict. We'll just have steak, enjoy it. But, we're going out for a walk. We're actually, because the roads are going to be pretty clear, we're going to drive to the sea if the weather's okay, and take Rupert for a long walk on the beach and just have a reasonably quiet sort of Christmas. We're doing something Boxing Day with Jane's dad and his wife. So that's going to be by a big fire in a lovely old pub, and, a Christmas dinner there. And again, they do a carvery. So I tend to have sort of like a lamb shank when I'm there. So that's it. I'm quite happy. I think people have heard me mention before that I used to like their cheesy leeks. And then I had a big break when I went very strict carnivore. And I think it was about a year ago. I thought, well, let's see what it's like if I have the cheesy leeks. And they did taste as good as I remember, but they didn't love me at all. I felt really bad. So not bad as in guilty, but bad as in, it didn't agree with me. So I just felt that this just proves the lifestyle for me. I need to be strict. But I agree with you 100%. If you've got family, take the shackles off and just enjoy yourself. But the biggest thing is not feel guilty, and to just think, right, I'm back on it tomorrow or the day after, let's say, and away you go.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I mean, I wouldn't even word it in regards to back on, because it's a choice, and I think you should, if you go in to eat those foods, then enjoy them. Don't feel guilty, because you are living the healthy lifestyle 99 days out of 100. If you're going to have that one indulgent day, then the difference is our bodies are equipped to deal with these toxins, but we get that exaggerated response, which is exactly what you had there. So your body is equipped to deal with the toxins, but it's telling you, whoa, I don't want these anymore. Don't put them in again. But it doesn't mean that you can't deal with them. But what I would add to what I was just saying as well is that technically I will be consuming some form of vegetable, because I'm cooking the chicken on a bed of onions and leek. So residue of, and I'll be making the gravy out of that. So yeah, I mean, in one context or another, I can't get away from consuming those plant toxins. I'm not too bothered. I know that I'll be paying the price after, but for me, it's the benefit will come with me being with the family and enjoying that meal, and even more so gravitating my little girl into the way of eating animal proteins, because she'll openly tell you that she hates meat, and it breaks my heart because because that's all. If I had my way, that's all I would feed her. Now, many may see that as child abuse, but you and I, and as do all the listeners, we understand proper nutrition. That is the healthiest way to live. In her lunchbox, I would just send her to school with mincemeat or pieces of chicken and some cheese. And I have done previously, and I've had some harsh words with teachers, but
keep it light, Rich. Come on, it's Christmas.
Yeah. It is what it is, isn't it? But and that's exactly it. Let your hair down. If you want to eat something that you're not meant to, who cares?
Yeah, let your hair down is quite good timing, because my wig. It's not really a wig. Oh, I've let it slip. My beard's falling off. Let's read a couple of the comments, because it's really nice that people on Christmas Eve have popped in to say hello. Living Carnivore UK. Good afternoon, Santa. Oh, good afternoon. I wonder if you've been naughty or nice. We should ask everybody if they feel they've been naughty or nice. But anyway, we will be having some kind of meat and then cladding the conservatory ceiling. There you go, good old British people doing stuff like lagging the pipes and cladding the ceiling. Catherine Brewer here. Happy Christmas, fellas. We've got a 5 kilogram wing rib of beef, pigs in blankets, between 5. Think we should have enough. We'll have all the trimmings. I'll just do my best not to overdo it. And that's a great attitude, okay. Catherine. Phil Richardson, up there in Scotland, he's got a 4-pound turkey, 4-pound rib of beef, lots of pigs in blankets. I mean, that's the go-to. Down here in our posh farmers, they are called not pigs in blankets, but hogs in duvets. Yeah, there you go. Herbert, hi, Herbert, that's good. I had my 2 pounds of ribeye today. Doubt I will be able to eat anything more today. Wonder what you're going to eat tomorrow, though, because that's Christmas Eve still, don't forget. Matthew, unless he's in a place where they're already at Christmas. Matthew, Merry Christmas, Santa, Richard, and everyone. Am I on the naughty list? Well, I've checked it twice, and yes. But there you go. No, you've been great, Matthew. Definitely nice. And Herbert, maybe a slice of prosciutto, but just to be more social. And I mean, that's the key, isn't it? It's about being social, but having a nice time and not going too bad. That's the thing. If you keep sort of reasonably meaty, and fill yourself up with the meats and the fatty meats, lamb or goose. We had goose one year and it was fabulous, or duck or something like that. I think turkey is about the worst thing you can have, because it is so dry and it's not very fatty. I think it's quite tasteless, turkey. Chicken that
not mine. My turkey is absolutely stunning, but I haven't cooked it for quite some years. But as I've said previously, I am an incredible cook, but I just don't cook with the vegetables and all the bits anymore. So it's, I guess, a bit boring posting pictures of a piece of a slab of meat. But yeah, I will be flavoring the chicken I'm going to be cooking that on a bed of onions and leeks. Yeah, and I'll be adding all the niceties. It's going to be absolutely incredible. My turkey is always incredibly moist, but I'm not. Where's Santa gone? But I'm not cooking the turkey this year. Yeah, I don't mind turkey. I think if you cook it correctly, it can be absolutely incredible. But it just saves me a massive headache, because the turkey that I would buy normally is the size of a dinosaur, and it would take 5 or 6 hours to cook. And I wouldn't cook it the night before. I'd cook it on Christmas. So I'd get up early on Christmas Day and I'd spend all day cooking. And that's fantastic. I used to love doing that. That's what I used to really look forward to more than anything on Christmas Day. But now I don't have to go through all that, because I can cook my chicken in 2.5 hours or less. So it's going to be a nice, relaxed Christmas morning for me. But yeah, you don't have to cook your turkey dry. You strip it off, Steve.
I've got a Swiss water decaf coffee here, and this isn't my costume, by the way. I mean, it's borrowed from my father-in-law. So yes, I didn't want to get coffee on it. But anyway, that was enough of that. 10 minutes of being Santa. I think everyone possibly enjoyed it, but there you go. Let's have a look. What else have we got? Having what we got here. Carl is having 1.2 kilograms of best cut rib of beef and can't wait. Living Carnivore UK is, if turkey is that flipping good, why do we only eat it at Christmas? What a great point. Yes. Landers, thanks for popping in, Landers. Happy Christmas, boys. That's great. And we have Herbert here and a glass of Keto Pro electrolytes. Wow, talking about living it up. Living the
dream.
So I was thinking there was going to be more questions, but I think most people are in the festive mood, aren't they, really?
While we're waiting for some questions, I'll just give everybody a little piece of information in regards to something that we have planned in the new year. Stephen and I are working on a podcast, a presentation based on veganism and versus carnivore, and whether it is ethical or which is ethical. And I have been extremely fair, I believe, in the information that I've been researching, to the point that I've probably even dumbed down our argument against it. But some of the information in there is incredible. I've looked into, in fact, let me pop it on my screen so I can look at some of the references there. So we've been looking into basically how many animals a vegan, an average vegan would kill every year as a result of growing crops. And I've looked into, the average consumption of meat versus, because when we look at the studies that compare a vegan lifestyle to a meat eater lifestyle, what they are in fact doing is looking at a vegan and a non-vegan. You're not comparing a vegan to a carnivore. And I think that's an incredibly important point to make, because someone who is a non-vegan and a non-carnivore is causing more damage to the environment and is causing, from the research that I've done, more deaths to animals. So someone living a normal lifestyle, if you want to call it normal, is indeed doing this. So the vegan argument in regards to animal deaths and cruelty and damage to the ozone layer and all these sorts of things are valid. But if you compare a pure vegan lifestyle to a pure carnivore lifestyle, some of the figures in there are incredible. And I've even gone into the depth in looking at what the average person would consume. So I've looked at the average height of a man and a woman across the world, the average weight of that person, how many grams of protein that person would need to consume in order to obtain all the nutrients that they need, compared to how many animals that person would take to live within a yearly period, compared to a vegan who does kill animals, not on purpose. But a point that I would add to this is that you can't have life without death. And whether a vegan wants to admit it or not, whether they are directly responsible for that death. So if when we eat meat, that animal has died and it's on our plate. But to a vegan, they are not causing any harm because their crops are coming and they're not having any animals killed, they're not eating meat. But what they don't realize is in order to produce those crops, the fields are desertified. Animals are, and we've got pictures and images and all sorts. Some people may find them harming or they may be offended by them possibly, but I think it's important to put them in. But animals are caught up in this machinery. This machinery is plowed through the ground, dragging up this soil, ripping the foliage from the roots, catching animals within the machinery, killing the animals dead. And if you notice, there are flocks of birds circling this machinery when this tractor or combine harvester is carrying out this work, and it's because of all of the dead animals that are caught in there. But it doesn't end there. So from a vegan's perspective, this only happens once, but it doesn't. This would happen every time this vehicle would go through this land. But what is also occurring is this land is being desertified. These crops are being sprayed with glyphosate, a herbicide. Now, the Smithsonian's Zoo Institute, in fact, there's a big list of what that institute is called, but I haven't got it on my screen yet. But it's something like 1.2. That's, in fact, save me making numbers up. So the study by the Smithsonian National Zoo and Conservation Biology Institute shows that at least 67 million birds die each year in the US alone as a direct result of pesticide use. 67 million, that's an incredible amount. And what happens is when we desertify this land or spray it with glyphosate, the herbicide glyphosate, it doesn't only protect the plants, but it kills any insects and anything in nature that wants to feed on the plant. But it also affects the microbes in the soil. So now the soil becomes desertified, and that soil will never become able to produce and grow crops other than that crop again for another 20 years. So that soil is desertified for 20 years. Now, all the insects and all the little snails, earthworms, all of these things die off. Yeah, pick your creature. And then the birds have nothing to eat. And then the animals that eat the birds have nothing to eat. So the whole ecosystem dies. But what I've done with this is I've worked out how many animals, and I've gone through study after study after study for this. I spent days and days and days looking into these figures to be as honest as I can. And these figures are incredibly reserved, because some figures I've seen touted by other professionals within our space is considerably higher, but I've kept this incredibly low, and you'd have to wait until we release this podcast to see this. But it is it's still basically, the long and the short is, a carnivore causes 20 times less death than a vegan does, which is an even a carnivore who isn't strict still only consumes maybe the equivalent of 5 animals a year, which is an incredibly low amount. But some of this research is incredible. I can't wait to record this. I don't know what format we're going to record it in, Steve, but it's going to be good. There's a lot of figures in there, and I think it's going to stir up a lot of. I don't think we're going to be well liked within the vegan community when we post this.
But the truth hurts. You see, this is the thing. Let's get some questions, because I think you're giving away too much there.
I have.
That was our teaser. Okay. Herbert wants to say, what is the mechanics for glucose to damage the glycocalyx? I do not expect an answer now. Well, why don't you? Well, that's what we're here for. I'm quite happy to do a little bit on that, and then Rich can as well. Glycation is the biggest problem. That's when glucose interacts with protein, basically, and you get these advanced glycation end products. So the glucose, to be very crude, the glycocalyx is lines the arterial wall, and it's sort of like that, and it's protective as the blood flow goes through and everything goes past. It will pick things up. But what happens when you start to have carbs, and we've seen this, it flattens completely. And it takes about 8 hours to recover once the carbohydrates are in there. So you've got that structural damage from the advanced glycation end products. You've also got, obviously, inflammation, localized inflammation. Then you get into oxidative stress, and this will all then lead to sort of an impairment of the vascular function of that organism. So there's your answer. But if Rich wants to add some more, I'm happy for Rich to add a little bit more if he wants to.
Yeah, I think that says it all, really. It's basically, as you say, damage to the glycocalyx. 8 to 12 hours it takes to recover. And we're told to eat little and often. So we're constantly causing damage to the glycocalyx, preventing it from ever recovering to its true state. And this leads to atherosclerosis, cardiovascular disease, and a whole host of other things. Glycation is one of the biggest contributing factors to ill health. The oxidative stress, as you say, the electrophilic stress, which we don't speak enough about, and I think is something new that we could introduce next year. But it's it is as simple as that. Glucose damages cells, excess glucose, because the body needs a certain amount. So it's this case of excess glucose.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Very nuanced. It is always about too much of everything, isn't it? But I'm not saying everything in moderation, by the way. But when we look at glucose, you need about a teaspoon in 5.5 liters of blood on average. So let's have a look at the next thing. Again, I think this is Carl, actually. Would you recommend a more lean approach to carnivore to someone with... Let's redo that. Carl is asking, would you recommend a more lean approach to carnivore for someone with a lot of body fat to lose?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Yeah. So look, initially, I don't think it matters unless that person is having a negative effect from the overconsumption of fat. It's always important to remember that protein and fat builds up every cell in the body. So both are incredibly important. Lack of saturated fats is the reason that most of us suffer with hormonal issues later in life. Saturated fats are incredibly important. So the problem, the quick answer to this is there's no straight answer, because it depends on that person, what type of background they're coming from, how damaged their body are. But it's always important to remember the fat is incredibly important. But my experience, I would say not to fear the fat. Eat as nature intended and see how you get on, because this initial introduction to the ketogenic way of eating, because this is the metabolic state that one would be in when they're carnivore. We look at keto and carnivore as being two different things. They are one and the same. There's different varying degrees of how deep or how strict down this journey that you are, but you are ketogenic. When you're ketogenic, the body burns fat for fuel. This can be dietary fat or it can be body fat, but the initial transition will probably see an upregulation of both. So my tip would be, don't overthink it initially. I would concentrate on removing the foods that are going to cause the fat storage, and to get into a more fine point with that is carbohydrate. Carbohydrate tells the body to store fat. When we consume carbohydrate, insulin is released from the pancreas. Insulin will upregulate lipoprotein lipase, breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends fatty acids into the fat cell. And that is caused by insulin, which is caused by the amount of carbohydrate that we consume. I'm not anti-carb because of what I do. People believe that I am against carbohydrate. I'm not against carbohydrate. I just don't believe that people understand how damaging glucose can be to the body. This is why the body stores glucose in the muscle as glycogen in order to save your life, because it's taking a toxin from the blood. Talk for another day. But we need another enzyme called hormone-sensitive lipase in order to break the bonds on the glycerol backbone to allow the fatty acids to diffuse back into the bloodstream. In order to do this, we need low insulin. For low insulin, we need low carbohydrate. So by seeing this transition into a carnivore or ketogenic lifestyle, we're not eliciting this response. Therefore, we're not sending the signal to the body in order to store fat, and we're preventing the body from holding on to stored body fat. So we're going to see an upregulation in body fat oxidation, i.e. weight loss, whether we are strict or not. And what I would add to that is the amount of fat consumed. We can look at a later date, because what will happen eventually, we'll see a massive loss, or a loss at least, in body fat percentage incredibly quickly, and then you may plateau. Then is the time that we need to look at other factors, and this could be a lectin issue. It could be a artificial sweetener issue, or it could be excess dietary fat issue. But I wouldn't look at that initially. And I think to do so for someone coming into this lifestyle is going to teach them the wrong thing, because you're already teaching that person to fear something that is essential for life. Fat is essential for life. We can't live without it. And I think telling somebody to avoid fat is going to put the wrong idea in their head. And again, we're coming from this society that already fears fat, and we don't want to be fearing fat. So I would advise initially just to eat animal proteins, whatever cut your body's comfortable with. If you're eating fatty cuts and it's causing gastro issues, lower the amount of fat that you are consuming with your meat, but still consume fat with your meat. Don't be concerned about where or how much fat that you're consuming. I wouldn't even be concerned about what animal proteins you are consuming initially. Get into the rhythm and the routine of eating animal proteins, animal fat, while restricting, removing, or heavily reducing the amount of carbohydrate from vegetables and other external sources. Get into that routine. Get your body adapted, and then we can start to introduce other levers or pull. Bloody hell, Steve, every time you come, we're not playing strip live today, we know. Next time you're going to come on and you're going to be topless.
Well, that's a great answer. And for people who like that answer, I mean, this is very much like the Fat Club course that we offer on Mighty Networks. And Mighty Networks is free to join. So you could join the community, check out what the community is like, and the links will be in the description after the live stream is finished. And if you feel like you want to sign up for the Fat Club, this is the sort of advice that you get. We've done loads and loads of videos like this, and it's 8 weeks of tuition basically. And just as a sort of thank you on the app, so you'd have to download the app. We've got a Carnivore Experience app. You can go to Google or Apple, just type in the Carnivore Experience and you should see the app. Once you've downloaded the app, we're offering a 7-day free trial of Fat Club. So you can look at some of the content. Most of it is locked out because obviously, you know, it's a paid for thing. But on the app, there's tons of free material. So there's like a meal plan and there's tracking and there's tips to starting carnivore. So it's a handy little app to have. But the great thing about the app is we can also let you have the free trial to have a look at Fat Club. So you could look at it and think this is really great. I prefer Mighty Networks and go over to there, or you could look at it and then just sign up and do it via the app. But it's growing day by day. And I just want to plug something else. My podcast, I do an audio podcast of this show and everything that we produce. And I started that on the 23rd of January, and I had a notification this morning of 50,000 downloads. So we've been having about 1,000 downloads of the audio podcast. If you didn't know that was around, then that's also in the description. So that's the end of the sales pitch. Well, it isn't really sales because most of that's free. And the Fat Club is incredible value, I think. So let's get into the next question. And the hat's going to be the next thing to go because it's difficult to read everything. It's just, the thing is, the hat is designed to have the wig underneath. Sorry if I'm spoiling everyone's Santa Claus dreams here. But anyway, Landers, I was going to abstain from carbs / junk, but worried about being labelled antisocial / Grinch. I will make it clear regardless what family and friends think. This may be the last time I indulge. And that's it. You could be the confident carnivore. You could be the one that does say no thank you. I just did that actually. We had Jane's dad round with his wife and they all had mince pies, and it was just like, no, I don't think I want to do that. So you can be that person. And obviously they then sent me out of the room, didn't speak to me for an hour. You know, it doesn't work like that. I just sat and we just chatted, and we're sad really. We played dominoes and triominoes, if anyone knows what that is. And it was great. So don't worry so much about that. If someone is het up because you're not having potatoes, really that's more their problem, to be honest, than your problem, isn't it? I mean, why get so anxious about somebody not having a slice of bread? It's ridiculous, isn't it? You're dying to jump in. Go on then, Rich.
And you are completely spot on, because it is their problem. They don't like the fact that you are not eating the food that they are, because they can't do what you do. I take that as a compliment. You were doing something that they can't do, because sugar, no matter which way you spin it, is a drug. Sugar is a drug. It's more addictive than heroin. And this is the reason that when you tell somebody to become carnivore or keto and they need to restrict bread past the rice, you see the fear of God in their eyes. Now, whether they believe what you're saying or not, they will always find research to back up their belief. And as a species, we do it all the time. You could show them 99 papers, or you could rack up 99 people who all say this is the way forward. It only takes one person to tell that person what they want to hear, and that is what they'll take on board. Unfortunately, this is the society that we live in, and it's because sugar is a drug. Now, I train with a local athletic club. Very few of us are carnivore, and a lot of the guys there they'll post studies in regards to how carbs are more beneficial, and keto is leads to bone loss and all this sort of stuff. And I've spent time going back, and it just falls on deaf ears. They'll find the research that they want. I'll send the true information back, and I'll even explain it. I can't be bothered anymore. It's my time's too precious to try to convince someone who is a drug addict, and that's what these people are. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I believe that we're all addicted to this drug, and we could all slip back into that incredibly quickly. But you not consuming that mince pie, or anyone else of you who are listening who does not fall into that, if you want to do that, that's fine. I'm not saying that you don't you're not allowed to do those things. Sorry, I got something in my throat here. But
do you want to have a drink?
Certainly. I'll finish this quickly, and then you can blabber on for 2 minutes while I have a drink. But I would not feel guilty by being the one person who does not eat that mince pie, who does not want that chocolatey treat, because it's not your fault. As Stephen says, this is their problem. And I take that with both hands, and I make a point of it. If that person or those people don't want me there because they feel embarrassed because they cannot abstain from that drug, then that's fine. That just makes you the better person. I do understand what you're coming from, and this is why I'm making a meal that contains foods that I don't agree with. But this is where we find that happy medium, isn't it? So it's not your problem. If you don't want to eat that mince pie or that chocolate cake or whatever it is, that is everyone else's problem. It is not yours. So I would not feel guilty, but I completely empathize and sympathize with being in that situation. But own it. Make a point of it.
I think that's the thing I was going to say, actually, is you can be confident. Now, I was lucky enough to have an interview, and the person was called The Confident Carnivore, and we spoke about that, and that was quite an eye-opener for me, because I was a little bit apologetic when I first started carnivore, even though I had a history of low-carb and keto. And then I realized, no, I don't need to be apologetic about this. It's good for me. I'm doing it for a reason, and it's for my health. And in 10 years, when everyone else's health has gone to the wall and I'm still healthy, they're not going to be around, these people. So that might sound a bit mean, but there you go. It is a little bit mean, possibly. Landers has got a question for Richard. So I think he's had his drink now, and we'll get him back on the screen, and we'll go through the question from Landers. Richard and Stephen, happy festive season to you both. Why do we not worry about balanced electrolytes before we go on keto/carb diets or low carb diets? I was asked and couldn't explain clearly. Why do we not worried about balanced electrolytes?
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah. Well, why don't we? Because we should be. Electrolytes are incredibly important. Now, coming away from keto and carnivore, as a nutritionist, because that's what I am by trade, I work with people who do not want to comprehend living a low carb, ketogenic, carnivore lifestyle. So I work with all sorts of people. With a correct addition of electrolytes, whether that be from Celtic sea salt or any other rock salt or supplement with a quality electrolyte, that person sees an improvement in energy, mental clarity, anxiety, depression. These things are essential for life, and we don't get enough of them. And the nutrients that we consume, or the anti-nutrients that we consume on a standard diet, prevents the absorption of many of these things. So why don't we? because we should all be concerned about electrolytes, whether it's from supplementation or natural sources. But when we do become ketogenic, then the body is recovering from insulin resistance, if that term even exists, and that's a talk for another day. But in the context that we understand, chronically elevated insulin or insulin resistance, we see a massive recovery from this when we become ketogenic, because it is driven predominantly by glucose and vegetable and seed oils. But when we drop glucose, insulin drops, and it's insulin that pulls sodium back into the blood from 4 points in the nephrons and the kidneys. Wherever sodium goes, water follows and leads to high blood pressure. So from the normal sort of society view, i.e. your doctor, if you go with high blood pressure, they'll tell you to avoid sodium because sodium is contributing to high blood pressure. But it is contributing, but it's not the cause. We need sodium. So, but what do we do as a society? Well, we take sodium out, but we need sodium. So can you see, in there lies the problem. So instead of looking for an alternative, well, why don't we address the root cause, which is this chronically elevated state of insulin? Well, let's reduce whatever it is that's causing that state of elevated insulin. And that is excess carbohydrate and vegetable and seed oils, particularly the oxidized linoleic acid. When we remove those, insulin drops, releases sodium from the body. So now we need to overcompensate for sodium because it's being flushed out of the body. So that's why we take it when we're coming into the ketogenic type lifestyle, but we do adapt. Our requirement for it can become considerably less. But why don't we consume it? Why don't we consume sodium and potassium and magnesium? These things are essential for life. We don't get enough from the foods that we eat. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, a lot of the compounds in the foods that we eat are anti-nutrients, and they prevent the absorption of these nutrients. So we should be consuming more electrolytes. And I dare say that any of your friends who are suffering with lethargy, anxiety, depression, all of these things, the addition of electrolytes could see an incredible improvement without even changing your diet. We need sodium and we need potassium. It's part of the electron transport chain and how we create energy.
Can I just say, one of the things I often say to people to drum this home is if you go into an accident, an emergency, or go into hospital, one of the first things they'll do is put a saline IV into you, so an intravenous supply of sodium chloride. So the concentration there is 0.9% if you look into the clinical sort of average of what the saline solution is. Sodium chloride. They don't think, oh, wow, this person's just had a heart attack, he's had a problem, or she's had a problem, there's massive pains in the stomach or whatever. Is this going to be too much salt? That saline solution is whacked straight in because they know that is going to help with all the physiological functions. It's even an adjunct to the function of the medications that they put in. So it seems very hypocritical for something that is used extensively in accident and emergency and throughout hospitals to facilitate the recovery of people, i.e. sodium chloride at literally 1% density, and then say, but it's dangerous. Well, if it's that dangerous, why are they doing that? Sorry, I'm nearly close to a rant there, and I don't want to. But there is so much hypocrisy in the mainstream advice. And I'm teetering on the blink of getting this taken down from YouTube. So I will stop there. Now then, this sounds like a bit of sales pitch. We just talked about some of the things, but these questions come in and we don't filter them. We don't ask anyone to do it. So this is going to be for Rich. Andy828, I recently purchased Keto Pro electrolytes and MCT powder. Any tips for optimal benefit, timing and quantity? Also, I love this question, also, would they break a fast and take me out of ketosis? Great questions, Andy.
No, none of the products I produce will break a fast or take you out of a ketogenic state, especially the electrolytes and the MCT. The electrolytes are specifically designed for living a ketogenic lifestyle. They would not break a fast whatsoever. The MCT will only enhance a fasted state. The MCT, which is caprylic acid, 99.9%, the world's highest purity. So I produce the world's highest purity MCT. This is sent straight to the liver through the hepatic portal vein and instantly converted into ketones, whether you are ketogenic or not. So even a person who is fueled by glucose, if they were to take my MCT powder, they would produce ketones, which is incredible because the brain, the body, and the heart can benefit. But the upregulation of ketones will only further enhance a fasted state. As regards as timing, I add a little bit to my water and I drink it throughout the day. I very rarely drink water without the electrolytes now, but I just put a lot less in. I think what the mistake a lot of people do is they put too much into a small amount and it can be overpowering, and they only do that once a day. You're better off reducing it, adjusting to taste in the same way that you would do with squash when you were younger. Your mother used to make it incredibly strong and you would be cringing and you'd have to water it down. And as you grew up, you're making, the squash a little bit stronger yourself naturally because you understand that the body needs these things. And I think that's that's the best advice I can give in regards to the volume of the electrolytes. Adjust to taste. If it's too strong, add more water, or next time put less powder in. But I'd add those throughout the day rather than spiking and crashing. Keep this sustained level of electrolytes. As far as the MCT, you can take it as and when you want. It's not going to do any harm in regards to breaking a fast. And just remember that this is the quickest form. It's the shortest chain of the fatty acids that we can get from diet. We can get a C6, but you can't put that into supplement form. So C8 is the shortest chain that we can manufacture and put, or we can find in food naturally then that we can obtain. So when we look at coconut oil, 6% of coconut oil is C8 or caprylic acid. We have taken all of those 6% and basically put them into one bottle or tub, making that 18 times more effective than coconut oil. The way that I take MCT, it depends. I'll use it in the morning. If I have a coffee, I'll add it to that. If I don't, I'll add it to my chocolate exogenous ketones, or I'll add it to my electrolytes. I don't use it every day, but I use it on days where I feel that I need that little kick of mental clarity, because it just floods the body with ketones and it upregulates the brain, the body, and the heart. Sometimes I'll use it before a workout. Sometimes I'll use it after a workout in order to help with inflammation. So there's lots of different reasons that you can consume this. It'll help with weight loss. It'll help with increasing the biodiversity of the microbes in the gut. It will help with infection. It'll help with inflammation. It will allow you to sleep if you take it before bed without adding it to coffee, obviously. That's a mistake somebody made before. Well, you told me to take it before I went to bed and I couldn't sleep. Well, how did you take it? I put it in my coffee. Well, I thought that I thought that was so simple I didn't need to put it in, so I thought I'd add that. But don't add it to coffee if you want it to help with sleeping. You can take as and when you want. And it depends on what reason. I take it for health. So I'll add it generally to any drink that I'm consuming, whether that be electrolytes or BHB or coffee. If I do still drink coffee occasionally. I am aware of the detrimental impacts of coffee through the acrylamide and the effects of the caffeine. But for me, the amount I use, the benefit outweighs any potential negative side effect. And I don't seem to suffer with those negative side effects if I keep my consumption low. But as far as the MCT goes, use it as and when you want. As and when you want. You can't overdo these compounds, and the body will reject them far before. So sodium, if you consume way too much, the body will tell you. You physically won't be able to drink any more of it, and you will be sick. And I consume probably 10,000 milligrams of sodium per day, and I have never got to the point where my body's rejected, sodium. And that's how essential it is for life. And the studies that we look at give us ranges of 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams, but this is what is recorded as being excreted. Now, when we remember that most sodium that we consume is actually recycled and reabsorbed within the body, which means that if we imagine the amount that is excreted, the amount that is ingested is going to be considerably higher. So these figures that we see of 4,000 to 6,000 milligrams being optimal, we can comfortably add more to that because of the volume of sodium that is reabsorbed. So eat as nature intended. Use these, these things as much as you want, and it's just listen to your body, and it's as simple as that. If last night, I poured, some bottled water into a glass, and I would normally add electrolytes to it, and I didn't want to because I didn't feel I needed it, so I didn't. And it is as simple as that. Listen to your body, and the more that you live this lifestyle, the more highly attuned you become to the signals that the body gives, and you will eat to satiety. You will use these things as and when you want to, and your body will tell you when you need to.
Great stuff. And that's the sort of answer, like I say, you get in the Fat Club. And all the videos have timestamps. So if, for instance, you're okay with electrolytes and then you've got a different question, like say this one from Living Carnivore UK, you can just click on that. So you save yourself a lot of time. I've seen a lot of benefits already from this way of eating, but still no shift in my mood, still lethargic. I know it's different for everyone, but I'm really looking forward to seeing the energy boost. One thing I would say, it does take a lot of time to adapt. And one of the reasons for the lethargy is protein takes a lot more energy from your body to be digested. That doesn't mean it's bad. It actually just means it's more dense. To get a juice, a smoothie or something, it's been blitzed to within an inch of its life, and you can neck that really quickly. And there's not much chewing going on. There's not much stomach acid needed. There's not much processing going on, and you get a big, thick, juicy, fatty piece of lamb, for instance. Well, that's going to take up to 5 times as much energy just to digest. So that could be one of the reasons you're feeling a little bit tired. Secondly, those nutrients have then got to be accessible to give you the energy. So if you haven't got the bile production up where it should be, which takes a little while for your body to get used to eating the proper way. And I do want to say that in 2024, we're not going to talk about adaptation as if this is the odd thing. We're going to talk about resetting you back to where you should be. Because what's actually happened, you and me and Rich and everybody that grew up in eating this sad diet adapted to that. And now we're trying to unlearn and rethink it all, and the body's going back to where it should be. That's going to take a little bit of time. That's going to take a lot of time, and it is longer for some people than others. I always say 26 weeks, maybe, or 20 weeks plus or minus 6, depending on how you look at it, before you start seeing those differences. And of course, your mood is not going to be optimal if your body is still learning how to digest. Because if you have a big meal, let's say, when we use carbs as an example, because people have been there, you're all bloated, you have to undo your belt, and you feel absolutely lethargic and terrible. And then half an hour later, when the dessert comes out, you can still eat it, but you regret it. So the body, once it starts eating too much food for its processing, you start to feel a little bit, tired and fatigued. So don't worry about that. I think as long as you just stick with it, you will start to go back to where you should be, and you will see the benefits. Virtually everybody reports within the first year more energy, less lethargy, and certainly improvement in mental health and well-being. Carl has asked one more question. Is it advisable to go straight into the carnivore diet or adopt the lifestyle slowly? This is one of the topics that we actually did a big piece on in the Fat Club about this adaptation. So, Rich, do you want to do a brief answer on that one?
Yeah, really quickly, just coming back to the last comment also. It does take time. This upregulation of ketones takes a long time. So the body produces ketones incredibly quickly, but they create ketones in the form of acetone and acetoacetate, many of which are wasted through our urine and through the breath. But the body wants beta-hydroxybutyrate, and it takes an awful long time to upregulate the pathways and systems involved with this, the monocarboxylate transporters and specific enzymes in order to utilize beta-hydroxybutyrate. So it does take time. So as Stephen says, just stick with it. You can force the body to upregulate the MCTs, the monocarboxylate transporters. You can perform high-intensity exercise. High-intensity exercise, sprinting, for example, will upregulate these pathways. C8 MCT oil and powder and exogenous ketones also stimulate the body to upregulate these MCTs. Someone who is not ketogenic or carnivore, if they were to use these compounds, the MCT and the BHB, you will produce beta-hydroxybutyrate immediately, and the brain and the body and the heart would benefit from these things. So these are ways and tools that you can implement, along your journey in order to upregulate those pathways. Coming back to Carl's point, I believe incremental changes work best for me. I didn't begin my journey as a carnivore. I began with going low carb. Then I found ketosis and I became dirty keto. Then it was standard keto, then clean keto. And the further that I traveled down this rabbit hole, the more that I learned and the more things that I abstained from, and the deeper and deeper that I traveled down this rabbit hole to the point where I became carnivore. And now predominantly, if you want to label it, living the lion diet. I predominantly eat beef and lamb. It's not to say I don't eat other things, but that predominates the amount of meats that I do consume. I still consume eggs and cheese occasionally, but I am actively trying to move deeper down that rabbit hole in regards to beef and lamb. Now, that said, you may be coming from an extreme case of ill health, and you may be the type of person where you need to make a big change for health reasons or even from a mental perspective. So there are two kinds of people. People who like incremental change and people who like step change. Incremental change is when you implement things, one change week after week or year after year, which is exactly what the Fat Club is. So this is an easy transition into living the lifestyle full of education pieces, allowing you to adapt into the lifestyle without making drastic changes, while giving you the knowledge in regards to why you're making these changes. And then there are step change, the type of person who it needs to be black and white. They can't have a little bit of this because they'll end up over consuming, or they can't have a little bit of that. They need all or nothing. And there are people who suffer with severe health conditions who need to go down the carnivore route immediately. But in my experience, the people who stick to the lifestyle are the people who gravitate slowly. The people who will remove one thing at a time and implement these changes week after week after week. And I've been ketogenic now for 10, 11 years, of which 4 I've been carnivore, but still in that metabolic state of ketosis. And I'm living the lifestyle. Steve, I know that you have implemented these changes, over years. You began low carb as well. And some of the strictest carnivores I see on the planet began their journey through these incremental changes. But it comes down to what type of person you are. For me, I think it's far more sustainable to increment the changes one by one and learn why you're making these changes, because it's when you learn that you become educated, and it's through these education pieces do we understand why we're making this change, why we're removing this food. Because when people ask you, you will be armed with that knowledge in order to say, well, these grains contain wheat germ agglutinin, which damage my intestines and lead to autoimmune disease, and so on and so forth. But if you make that big step, it's an awful lot of information to relay and take in. If someone was to ask you, well, why are you carnivore? Arrow. Because it's good for me. Well, why? And the answer is, I don't know. So for me, incremental changes have proven to be more beneficial, but I think it does come down to what type of person that you are.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant answer, and as always, a full and full-on answer. So right, let's have a look. We've got a couple of more nice comments. We'll be finishing on the hour. We are not doing our apple crumble one tonight because it's Christmas Eve and we've both got family duties to attend to. Landers, Stephen and Richard, thanks for supporting your subscribers. I really appreciate you both. Your videos and podcasts are a form of support for me from the, pardon the expression, carb junkies. And that is exactly one of the prongs of attack when we did the app, when we did the Mighty Networks, when we do our podcasts. We do them in sort of technical language and layman's language, and I think that's you probably spotted that Richard does the technical stuff. Even though I've got my science degree, honours degree in physiology and health sciences, I can do the layman's stuff. Well, we can both do layman's and we can both be technical, but I think it works the way it works at the moment. So yes. And our little short videos that we've started, it will say on the front of the thumbnail, this keep it simple. Keep it simple. There's like sort of some sticky notes. Keep it simple. And what is ketosis? What is diabetes? That's layman's. That's to be given to friends to watch. And we're going to do a lot more of those in 2024. Matthew.
And thank you, Landers. Appreciate that. It's, we support our subscribers, but you support us. So thank you also.
Yeah, the comments have gone crazy on lots of the videos, and it's really nice. Matthew, do animal foods contain enough boron? I've heard countries such as Turkey have much less boron in their water. Paul Saladino thinks the carnivore diet lacks boron. Right? Okay, so yes, okay. Well, firstly, the jury's out on whether it's not essential. That's the thing. Some people say it is an essential trace element, but it's not certainly essential in vast quantities. And it is found in fish, and it is found in meat, and it is found in eggs, and it is found in dairy. So I think if you're eating the carnivore lifestyle, it's going to be a little bit difficult to be short of boron. Allegedly, and this is the latest thinking, it promotes bone health and cell growth, but you try and find a study on it. Also, if you do a search and you ask for what are the percentages of boron in animal foods, you will come up against ever such a lot of problems. And I was going to share a screen actually. Right, let's have a look. I'm going to just share it if you don't mind. Or I could just read it out, actually. Yes. So if you go into chat GPT and you ask it about boron, you will be bombarded with propaganda about the plant-based diet, because you really need to be aware that when you are searching stuff on the internet or using things like chat GPT, they don't want to tell you the truth. Okay. So, basically, I've asked it about boron, and it said the recommended daily allowance is 1 to 3 milligrams of boron per day, may be beneficial for adults. Regarding animal products containing boron, it's important to note that boron is primarily found in plant-based foods rather than animal products. Fruits, vegetable, nuts, and legumes are a good source of boron. Okay, so I'm not considering a plant-based diet and would like to know about animal products and the profile of boron. Apologies for the confusion. It says boron is generally found in very low concentrations in animal products compared to plant-based sources. Animal products such as meat, dairy, and fish are not considered significant sources. And I put, can you tell me how much boron is in a steak, please? Remember what they've just said. I currently do not have access to a database of the specific boron content in individual food items such as steak. Now, if you don't know how much boron is in steak, you cannot tell me that steak does not have enough boron. I'm sorry. And that's chat GPT. And if you think I can just quickly show you the screen if you want, but that's like Rich saying, I can categorically tell you that you need my electrolyte, but I can't tell you how much is in it, and I can't tell you how much you need. Well, that's what you'll find. So if Paul Saladino has fantastic studies proving that there is not enough boron in animal products, firstly, and I'm not having to go at you, Matthew, because I know you just want to know the answer, get those studies to us and we'll have a look. Or you could do the search yourself and we'll rip it apart, I promise you, because a lot of people would have read that chat GPT and not thought like scientists think. They've got, oh, right. Oh, so it's not in animal products. It's in plants. Oh, really, I am scuppered. You have to actually question the technology the same as you would question a person when you're trying to learn something. Really, that's triggered me ever such a lot because it is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Now, if it said a 500-gram steak has 6 molecules of boron in, which incidentally, I seem to remember is exactly what you need as a human, I think, when I go back to my studies for physiology. It is an incredibly small amount. Then I would not be so cross. But I am cross when someone says, yeah, this is definitely better. That is really bad, but I can't tell you about either of the figures. Absolutely ridiculous. Right. So on that note, where I'm sounding a bit like Ebenezer Scrooge, Phil Richardson, have a good Christmas break, people. Cud
Really cool
Kiddy
bottle.
is saying, Merry Christmas, guys. Have a great
Merry
time.
Christmas.
I think we've got a great question here. We're nearly finished. Let's just do this one, if we can finish on this, because Living Carnivore UK has been quite supportive. Thank you, Stephen. My husband has liver cancer. He had full cirrhosis and probably not producing enough bile. Will ox bile be beneficial? What do you think about this, Rich, as a sort of supplement supplier?
Yeah, I've never used it, but I think it would confer a benefit if your liver is not producing. Now, there is a counter argument that by supplementing, that your body is not going to upregulate the systems in order to produce it naturally. But as a segue, I think it could be a good tool. It's certainly something that we need. So your body's fighting something else, obviously with cancer. So I would not be against supplementing on that occasion. So for me, it would be a good contribution.
Yeah, and I think eating this way just, especially to get the taurine from steak and from red meat, you will find your bile production will go up. So anyway, that was Christmas Eve. That was live at 5. We're sizzling at our normal time next Sunday, I think. Anyway, we'll look into that. Thank you for watching. Rich, do you want to sign off?
Yeah, thank you all for coming on board. We were unsure whether we were going to do this as it is Christmas Eve, but I'm glad we did. It's been incredible. Thank you all for popping on. Thank you all for the support. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.